And I'll tell you, this was something recent. I had a physician who came to class and she said, "It is amazing. Today I have made it to every appointment on time."
Mhm.
Why? Because we're learning to manage the calendar. And how many times do we say, I'll do this, and this, and then at some point during the day, I'll squeeze in my self-care, or I'll squeeze in this, and I'll squeeze in that, and we don't block it, exactly like you said, time blocking. Listen,
Nothing in this podcast is intended to render legal, financial, medical, or other professional information. Because the details of your situation are fact-dependent, we highly encourage you to find a recommended individual that you can trust to give you the expertise that you need related to your situation.
Good evening, Docpreneur Nation. This is Michael with a Concierge Medicine Today Docpreneur Leadership Podcast, and I'm here with the CEO of Rebellious International. It is a snowy day here in Georgia, and it's some ice outside, so that explains why we've got some warm clothes on. But maybe you're listening to this in the summertime, and if so, I can't wait for the summertime either. But Maria, thank you for being with us today.
thank you so much for having me on, Michael. I appreciate it.
So you Rebellious International, tell us a little bit about that and how it relates to what doctors do.
Well, let me ask you a question, Michael. Do you know any doctor who perhaps is stressed out or not having enough time to take care of him or herself?
I think I know a few, yeah.
Yes, that is what I can help doctors, or for that matter, anybody else. I practice the Angelovo method, which is a very curated approach to mind and body healing, and includes physical movement as well as mindset coaching. And the two big reasons people come to me is they have a pain point, whether it's a physical pain point or a pain point such as I feel stuck. I don't know what to do next. I know where I'm at a point that doesn't work for me. I'm really stressed out. I know I need to change something, but I don't have the time and I don't know where to start. So we go from there and I help them talking through, what their limiting belief system is. Most of us, I can share a little bit about my stories. I didn't even know there was such a thing until I quit my corporate job and got into entrepreneurship and found myself incredibly stuck despite of my prior successes. And it was clear I was missing something. So now I do the exact same thing, that I teach the path that I'm on to others to help them find freedom, happiness, to help them feel good in body, mind, and spirit.
Well, before we jump into the Angelova method and your retreat that's coming up, and how you're working with healthcare physicians, let's talk about how you are currently working with several physicians and their practices. What has been the response to what you do and what you talk about with them? Because every doctor I know, usually 9 out of 10 of them are stressed, are walking a thin line of sustaining their current pace, and they need a moment to relax, and they need a moment to just meditate or journal. And I don't know if it's the algorithm lately. I talked about this just yesterday on a with another physician interview that's coming out in February, as well as this one, is that journaling is kind of like that contract with yourself. And I don't know why, but maybe it is the algorithm, but journaling has really come up in my feed over the last few weeks, of this is something that I need to look into. And I know for me personally, it has been very therapeutic. And I think that it is when we study the successful habits of a lot of successful people, journaling seems to be, I mean, from well-known figures that we're all familiar with, which we're not going to talk about those today, but to just individuals who are families and mothers and fathers. Journaling is an important habit. And one of the pieces of advice that came out of a conversation yesterday related to journaling and making time for it, because that's the hardest part, is making time for it, is time blocking. And how do we schedule our day to make room for this? And you can, I don't know if anybody or my kids will ever go back and read these journals. I assume that they probably won't. They'll have busy lives too. But we do this for ourselves, so we document these things, and it really just kind of helps, I think, you serve as a pressure release valve. So talk to us a little bit about how your physicians that you've been working with are responding to what you're doing and how you're working with them.
So I would say that for a lot of physicians, finding time for themselves is one of the biggest problems, right? They're so used to taking care of patients, of their families, of perhaps elderly parents, that we're not taught overall as a society to put ourselves first, which is something that I'm so passionate about promoting, because from a personal experience, I will tell you it works. And it works not for just helping you feel good, but it helps you for building a thriving business and running a business while you're enjoying life. So a lot of the successful people, a lot of the physicians, when I tell them you need to find time for journal, and I don't push Michael, right? I meet the person where they are. So if there is a lot of resistance on the other side and they're like, I don't believe in that, I think it's BS, I don't have time for this, fine, let's find an alternative way. But I always tell people, let's start with 5 minutes. Can you give me 5 consistent minutes a day to do something for yourself? Now, whether it's journaling, breathing, meditation, stepping outside and taking a few deep breaths, whatever works for you, start there. There is resistance. A lot of times there is resistance. And I will tell you, one of the biggest things that I work with people people don't realize that time management is related to mindset, is learning to prioritize, is learning to manage your calendar. And I am fully convinced truly successful people don't run like chickens without their head off, right? They're in control of their schedule. And I'll tell you, this was something recent. I had a physician who came to class and she said, it is amazing. Today, I have made it to every appointment on time.
Mhm.
Why? Because we're learning to manage the calendar. And how many times do we say, I'll do this, and this, and then at some point during the day, I'll squeeze in my self-care, or I'll squeeze in this, and I'll squeeze in that, and we don't block it, exactly like you said, time blocking. Listen, how much of your day spend you sitting there and going, I have nothing to do, what should I fit in here? If I had to guess, probably not much time. So intentionality or being intentional is a word that I use a lot, because we have to be intentional of what our priorities are, and our calendar has to reflect those priorities. So if we're saying, I want to take care of myself, well, how much time is there on the calendar for you to take care of yourself?
Mhm.
For physicians especially, that's a tough one. You know, a lot of the feedback that I get is, well, I have patients, well, I have situations. I understand that and I respect that. How can you make it work? Just yesterday, I was working with somebody who is also dealing with a sick parent. So how do you manage the already full schedule along with something new that's coming in, right? So again, how can you, because she's managing it with a sibling, how can you manage, perhaps give from this to this time, I'm responsible, from this to this time, you're responsible, so that we can be effective. Because if you're not focused, if you're not intentional with what you're doing, we think we can multitask, but let's be honest, the truth is we can't. And if we're just rushing from one place to another, if our sympathetic nervous system is constantly fired based on stress and rushing, we cannot be creative, we cannot be focused, we cannot concentrate, we cannot be patient, and it just accumulates and it turns into these vicious cycles, which is not serving us. And if you feel you're overwhelmed, if you feel achy and tight, if you feel fatigued, if you feel exhausted, that is your body giving you feedback to something is off and you need to address that. And a lot of times I'll tell physicians, like, do I need to teach you this? Because I really don't. They understand that because they have studied that. It's just they have to shift their priorities and their lifestyle to take care of themselves. Because the flip question is, okay, so if something happens to you, who will take care of your patients? Who will take care of your family? And it sounds funny in the beginning and we can joke about it until it becomes not funny.
Yeah. I remember there's two things here, I think, that came to mind from the recent conversations with two doctors. One was Dr. Sahil Chopra talking about the importance of sleep and our sleep habits. And he said, you know, look, as a physician, if you're not getting an appropriate amount of sleep and you're not getting quality sleep, then you are not a good you are not a good lever for your patients. You're not, you know, helping them in the way that you truly could be. And another conversation, we asked a question to she's an Arizona concierge medicine physician. And I said, what app do you use all the time? And she said, I just live and breathe by the Calm app, CALM. This is an endorsement. We don't get, none of us are promoting them, but and there's great ones out there, I'm sure. But that one for her was, she's like, it's a game changer for me. I use it literally every day to keep the noise, out. And I think it was a great book. And if you haven't, we put it on our recommended reading list for physicians, is Green Lights. And I believe that if you haven't heard of it, or you probably have seen it on social media. It's by Matthew McConaughey, which I know, some folks are like a celebrity book, but it truly was. It came out of over COVID, and it truly was one of those. I think the biggest thing I got from that book, and that was one of the physicians we interviewed recommended that book. He's like, it was a pleasure read, but it was also very helpful with my moment to say, I need to check in with myself. I need to take a moment. If I want to be successful and a successful lever for my patients, successful lever in my life to my family, I have to make room for myself. I have to check in with myself. It doesn't mean that I'm sitting in a quiet closet or a quiet room, praying or meditating or whatever it is that people do. It doesn't mean you're doing that for an hour a day or 2 hours a day, but it does mean that, hey, you take 5 minutes in the morning, maybe you only have 5 minutes, and you purposefully construct something in your life to be a pattern interrupt. And so for me, it has taken a work in progress of, I've got 2 or 3 journals going at the same time of, one's a gratitude journal, one's more of a therapy type of journal. And I find that, I don't love to journal in my therapy journal all the time. In fact, I don't do it all the time. I haven't probably written in it for 3, 4, 5 weeks. But I find in the gratitude journal, I'm trying to pick it back up. And I have put it into a place, and I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try and check in with myself before I start my day. So I put it at the front of my desk every single moment before I leave at 5 o'clock. And some of us, you have an office as a physician. You've constructed this peaceful zone sometimes in your practice to be just your office. Well, maybe you do need to, take the stack of stuff and put the journal at the top and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be grateful for a few things today. And it just helps to take 5 minutes to check in with yourself. And we'll talk a little bit more about movement in just a moment. But if you have anything you would like to add to that,
do.
thoughts on maybe books you've read as well that you would recommend to physicians.
I completely agree with you. And I think what you just said, Michael, goes right along hand in hand with what I said, that it does not have to be long, which is a misconception that we have. It can be 5 minutes, and it could be 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, 5 minutes in the middle of the day. I personally will give you a tip. When my alarm rings and I wake up, the first thing, it has become so automatic, Michael, I don't even have to think about it. I literally, my eyes are still closed and I go into gratitude. And I don't just say I'm grateful for 1, 2, 3. I really go intentionally, like feeling the gratitude with my body of whatever it is that I'm grateful for. My next thing is I go into intention. I set up my intention for the day of how I'm going to show up. Those two take maybe 2 minutes. But right there, they set up the tone for how my day is going to go. And at the end of the day, I also do gratitude, whether I do journaling, and you have to figure out what works for you. Some people like to write. I actually love to write. So journaling is great for me. You don't have to write. If you don't have the time, and if you feel that stressing out, you can lie down in your bed. Nobody even is going to know that you're thinking about gratitude. Some people do prayer. Whatever works for you. It does not have to be long. It does have to be intentional, because Michael, something else that has happened is most of us nowadays are aware that we need to take care of ourselves, but self-care has become a checkbox item. I went to the gym. I went through my workout. I don't really know what exercises I did or where I felt them, but I did it. And meanwhile, I took conference calls or I listened to the news. I was not mind-body connected. So intentionality, and I talk about being intentional through your day, how you show up, being intentional with your movement goes a long way into the effectiveness and quality of your self-care. But I absolutely agree with you. Journaling, thumbs up, gratitude, that is such a game changer, guys. It changes your vibrations. It changes how you feel. It changes the tone of your day, or even if the moment.
Yeah. Well, and um, the stigma around meditation and self-care, I think has really over the last, maybe 10 years or so kind of gone away from a religious faith-based item to a healthcare, conundrum that we need to start addressing. And for physicians especially, you know, taking moments to do some self-care that do make you a better lever to your patients, to your employees, and to your family is, something that it's been physician burnout has come up for decades. But little is being done, from medical associations, from local societies and clubs to for doctors to say, hey, let's address how we're doing this. And so I'm grateful that there are organizations out there and methods out there and moments out there that people out there that are working with physicians. Talk to us a little bit about the Angelova method. And but well, actually, before we jump on that, I want you to add anything that you feel as though needs to be added to the stigma around meditation and self-care.
So, as you were talking about that, Michael, the one thing that pops to my head is I have a great time with my clients. We have fantastic relationships. We joke, and sometimes I'll be like, what do you think about meditation? And I kind of get an eye roll, or like, I hear about it, I've read about it, but not my thing. And sometimes
It's all crisscross applesauce, and
Right.
put your hands in the air and close your eyes and make yourself feel awkward in comfy clothes. And then, think about sunshine and roses and butterflies.
Yeah, and sometimes people are like, I don't have time for that. And sometimes I would say, well, are you willing to try? Like, can we play? Can we just do this? And I'll give them a taste of something that they're not open on. That seems weird, or sounds. What did sometimes one time hippie? Somebody told me that they don't do hippie stuff like that, and I said, well, let's just try it out. Let's play. Let's experience, right? And curiosity is one thing that curiosity, playfulness is, I think, something that we're forgetting as we become so rigid and so structured and so like go, go, go. And I think that's something that goes a long way into helping people relax. I mean, Michael, when we were at the last conference, the way I ended my presentation, right? We had physicians dancing on stage. We had medical professionals dancing on stage.
Mhm.
And I have to tell you, Michael, to this day, I love to watch that video, and you can see the joy and how into the movement those people are. They're having fun.
Yeah.
And
Well, and as a medical conference organizer and somebody who only gets snippets of, these amazing medical presentations that are very clinical, but also very business. One of the things this year, as an organizer, I was able to probably sit in for about 10 minutes in each one of the sessions. And one of if I was to summarize and I think that this is something that's interesting is if I was to summarize what the content, the overall theme was about, it was about several things. But one of the things I learned from a healthcare perspective is the body is meant to always be in motion. Yes, it's meant to have some sleep. It's always meant to have rest. But at some point, it's always meant to be in motion. And overcoming I love my bed. It is the most comfortable place ever. And it's warm, especially on snowy days like today. But when my buddy Derek comes and says, I'm running tomorrow morning, are you in? And I say, oh, like I hate it. But there's so much, and there's times I turn him down and be like, no way, dude. Like it's wet. It's not even raining, but it's wet. And I come up with excuses to say, I'm not going because we could slip and fall. You don't even know. And those are just excuses, and we have to overcome those failures. We will have those failures, but we have to be always in motion, and we have to take those moments to find balance in our life. And I know that sounds a little bit wellness and lifestyle oriented, but it is something that is not just a check mark on the box of our day, but we have to do these things in order to be a better lever.
Yeah. And I would just add, you said sometimes we have those failures. I don't believe in failures, and I don't think they're failures. I think they're lessons, and you're aware that you're making excuses, right? So how can you figure out a way to not make excuses? And perhaps if if you're truly worried about, I mean, yes, it is icy and it is slippery, right? Okay, that's fine. What can you do in the house so that you can
Mhm.
get your movement and not risk getting injured, right? I'm all for that. We're also very quick to judge ourselves. Oh, I told myself I'm going to get up and work out and I didn't. So now I'm a failure and I never do. And right. And we go down that rabbit hole. That's mindset. So give yourself grace. You're trying, you're aware, you're improving, right? You're seeing the improvement. You're creating new habits, and creating new habits, it's going to take one step forward, one step back, two steps forward, one step back. And then next thing you know, your friend doesn't even have to text you. You're going to be like, I'm going for my run, right? It's going
Yeah.
to become an automatic behavior. And the other thing is, I would tell you, is speaking of movement, just recently I had actually a male client, and they're even funnier because sometimes they're even more like, oh my gosh, the arrows, the stuff Maria you get me doing. He goes, I'm just gonna hop on one leg around the office. And I said, great. I said, you can inspire the rest of the staff. And he just started laughing. But yes, make it fun for your staff. Like,
Yeah.
how could it be for the staff to have fun with you and to move with you and for everybody to feel great? How would the energy in your practice change if you felt good and if you encourage your staff to feel great? Just think about that. If everybody felt there, how much better can you support a patient who is not feeling well, right? If
Yeah.
you're rating high and if you're feeling good and you truthfully have energy because you have slept well, you're rested, you feel authentically, you feel good in your body, mind, and spirit. It's a totally different experience. It's a game changer. And I'll tell you, Michael, once people start experiencing the difference, that's really what feeds them to keep going, because they're like, I am not going back, because now I have tasted the difference of what my life can be like. And and some people don't even know what it is to feel good, because
The only time it makes sense for them is when they see the blood work come back and they've had high cholesterol, when they look
yeah,
at their HDLs and LDLs and they see, oh, wow, I was able to, over the last year and a half, really make some
some change.
measurable changes. And, that's not easy and it does take work. And will say, I told this earlier to a physician in Texas this week. I said, look, you didn't sign up for easy. You signed up for worthwhile. And, life is not, we have to, and I think it's in the algorithm too. I talk about this a lot because I think it impacts us all. Is the search for happiness. It doesn't necessarily come in things. It comes in, the exploration of learning new things and finding new things that make us feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. But for example, I see different posts of different folks on social media that when we're working, and yours comes up as one of them, where you're doing your walks outside, right? And maybe it's something that came up from a week or two ago. But what that does in my mind, and I've told another physician this here in Georgia, I said, your post on social media, it was a cartoon, and it was, and I remember telling her just a couple of months ago, and I said, it has always, you probably posted it 5 years ago and have long since forgotten about it. But this little cartoon, when I think of you, I think about this cartoon. And I said, this is a compliment, even though, it's an awkward cartoon. Though this is why we exercise, was the cartoon, because these are the muscles in your legs that are going to help you get up off of the toilet when you're 85 years old. This is why we exercise. And it was she and I laughed about it. And but again, seeing your posts, seeing posts like hers, you're out walking, I'm like, okay, there are people out there that are doing this. And it serves as a reminder to physicians and their team members when they see these things pop up in our posts, which is part of our life and our lifestyle these days, is being on these doom scrolls, that we find something positive and we say, okay, there are people out there making time for this. I've got them. It's a mental note, because if we listen to the voice in our head, which is ourself, we are the best salesperson to talk ourselves into anything or out of everything. And if I remember, it was I think it was my pastor. He said, if a salesperson at a store said some of the things that we say to ourselves, in the aisle, like you're considering buying that coffee maker, and you're like, you need that coffee maker. Yeah, yes, you have 3 other great coffee makers at home, but you know that probably makes better coffee. If that salesperson, if another person said that to us, we would be shocked. We would probably never go back to that store again. So talk to us a little bit about the Angelova method and what it's doing for doctors, and walk us through that a little bit, and then we'll get into your retreat.
So I'm actually really glad about the examples that you just brought up, Michael, because they kind of go hand in hand with what I do. So when people think of movement, they're like, so are you like a personal trainer? And I kind of am like a personal trainer, except the depth to which I go into movement is different. I work very much with alignment. I work very much with body-mind connection. And a lot of what I do is related to functional movement. So exactly the example that you just gave. And I use this all the time. Like, the Angelova method is about aging with vitality and grace and feeling good. So yes, as you age, you want to be able to, and I see that in a lot of my older patients, they throw themselves into the chair to sit down. That is a risky move, because if that chair moves, it is not going to be a great landing. You don't want to throw yourself onto the toilet seat, right? You want to be able to get out of bed without your bones like cracking and everything hurting. You want to be able to tie your shoelaces without sound effects. Like, you want to be able to put your jacket without You want to be able to the cup without your neck like locking up, right? That's functionality that as we age, we want to be able to sustain so that we can age actively and continue to enjoy. And then from a mindset perspective, you said it, you nailed it. It's that voice that we hear, that is our subconscious mind. And most of us have no idea because we're so conditioned to it, right? It constantly talks to us, and the conversation is kind of one and the same. We want to reprogram that conversation that's happening into our head. And the very important thing for what I do, Michael, is so our thoughts, that's the mind. Our feelings and our emotions, that's our body. So when we are unaware of how our body is, we're kind of checked out. Now, sometimes people say, well, I'm going to change my mind, and starting January 1st, I have a New Year's resolution and I'm going to think positively and blah, 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 blah. Now, how does that work long time? We know that about over 80% of New Year resolutions fail. And why is that? Because something happens and it pulls us right back into the cycle of what we know. Why? Because your mind has changed. But the chemical conditioning that your body has for how it responds and what it craves is the same. So we have to change that chemical dependency. Why does gratitude in the morning start creating change? And why I talked about intentionality. Why is that important? Because your body starts getting the experience of feeling elevated emotions, right? So instead of feeling crappy and down and negative and snappy and overwhelmed and angry and whatever else you want to say, you start feeling like, oh, this feels good. And then your body's like, wait, give me some more of that, right? It's literally like an addiction, right? So the Angelova method works on the body and the mind, and I meet the person where they are. Some people, come with experiences of lots of physical pain. We look at the body. Is your body in alignment? And because of the most likely misalignment, how has that caused the biomechanics of how your muscles fire up changed? And then if you're sitting all day long, what has that done to your patterns? Are you sitting like this, like slouching and head forward, or are you sitting up nice and tall? Is your core strong, right? The core embraces the spine. The spine it supports protects our nervous system. How important is our nervous system? That's of key importance, right? So all of this comes together to create literally this magic. And what I'll tell you, what I love about my work, Michael, is it literally changes people's lives in the most incredible way. They become very mind body aware. They start using their body as a lever for, oh, I didn't sleep. Oh, look how I feel today versus when I had a good night's sleep. Oh, I didn't do my gratitude. I can feel the difference. You become so in tune into your body that literally the smallest shift in your mindset, you have the opportunity to interrupt. You mentioned the word interrupt, and to reroute is what I called it. And I'll tell you, when something happens, Michael, one of my go-to interrupts is is this worth my energy? So when I use something like I get into a spat with my spouse, right? And he's getting on my nerves, he has pressed the button, and now I start getting fired up. I pause, I take a breath, and I ask myself, is this worth like a potential bigger fight than what it is now about very likely something very silly and small? But it's the same thing about life. It's about things that happen with your patients, that happens with your interactions with others. And it's a transformative process. It takes time because we are literally reprogramming your brain of how to move, of how to think. And I'll tell you, Michael, like I see it in people, the way they start seeing the world is different. The way they start wanting, they crave it, their body craves it. And they tell me, like, I have people who are like, man, I hate working out. I dread going to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. They're like, I look forward. I can't wait to see you and to do our session. And then they're like, because I know how great I feel, I want to do that at home. So now it's like nobody's telling them to do it. They want to do it because they feel the difference. And there is, I'll tell you, Michael, there is nothing like watching a body that is tight, tense, chronically stressed to go into what I call like, let go. And teaching people, supporting people into learning how to flow with life versus push through life, which is what most of us are taught. It's an incredible experience. And they see, change in themselves first. They see change in their relationships. They see change into their professional practice. They start seeing success, performance. They start seeing their business growing. And very importantly, that's why I talk about redefining success. They're successful while they feel good. And I think that's the biggest game changer. So to me, the Angelova method is redefining what aging means. Aging does not mean being in pain. Aging does not mean feeling like crap. Aging is being vital, feeling great, being playful, having that energy. And it's redefining success. Yes, you can be very successful. You can be a badass physician or a rebellious physician and knock out and have a great, fantastic, thriving practice. And patients will see it in you, because my clients say, oh my gosh, like patients are like, what's happening to you, doc? Like, they're not sure what the doctor is doing, but they can see it in them. And it's a transformation. It's truly a transformation. Yeah.
And concierge doctors are, I think, one of the target audiences that understand the importance of, successful habits, whether it be journaling, whether it be taking time for self-care, whether it be, always staying in motion and exercising, whether, they incorporate a lot of these things. How does the first meeting with you work? How do I get engaged with you as a physician, as a busy doctor or, an administrative practice person who's listening to this and saying, okay, yeah, I would like to meet with you for like 30 minutes. How do I get started to learn more about this? Because I do need to make a change. And maybe it's a spouse that recently you got into a spat with, like you said, and it's like you are out of control, like you are so stressed, your mind is in a different spot. You're treating others, not like you should be. And we need you to you got to work on this. And I'm guilty of that. It's happened to me. So we can feel that, anxiety creep in. And then you can feel when you start to do some of these things like, okay, I'm approaching my work differently. I'm approaching people differently. And I have seen this personally happen for me by purposefully putting these pattern interrupts into my life that, it's clunky and it's not always easy. But we do it. So
Yeah.
how would a physician start to work with you?
So the best way is exactly actually what you said. Set up a 30-minute call. It can be done through my website. There is a Connect with Maria button. And we get on a call and we talk. And I ask you, what are your needs? So are they personal needs? Like, are you the potential client? Or do you have a need for, you're looking for a way to support your patients? Because let's be honest, most of us are pretty aware that we should have solid lifestyle habits. It's the implementation where people trip, right? Or the consistency where people trip. And we go through the needs. And or do you have a speaking engagement that you're looking for somebody like that? What is your need, and how can I support you to the many different venues and things that I do? Everything that I do can be very easily customizable. So whether you need physical work or mindset work or both, speaking, hands-on, online recording programs, whatever it is, I have tons of flexibility in supporting it. And really, Michael, for me, what's very important is the relationship. My business is very relationship driven. So let's say you it's a patient of yours like that has severe back pain and they've done a bunch of things and they don't know what to do. It's very much a collaborative effort to where I say, okay, so what do you think they need? And then let me do the evaluation. I will call you back and tell you, this is what I'm finding. This is from where I stand. This is what I recommended. As I start working with the patient, hey, heads up, I'm seeing this. Hey, this ache has shown up. This is why I think this ache has shown up. Hey, that person is doing great mentally. Hey, I have mental concerns for this client. They probably need to see a therapist, right? It becomes a very collaborative effort. And I'll tell you, patients love that because they feel like they have a team around them who is working with them and supporting them. If you personally need the support, I work with a ton of physicians, all sorts of modalities. It's a ton of fun work. And whether you need the physical aspect, whether you need the mindset aspect, or both. And sometimes people are like, I am at a loss of what I need. I just need something, right? We do a first session. We do maybe we actually start doing some of the work. And based on that, when I talk to a person, when I hear what they say, that gives me a lot of feedback of what's going on in here, right? When I hear their concerns, that gives me a lot of feedback around their belief system and where we have opportunities, where I see how they sit, where I see how they stand. I see the physical opportunities. Yeah, I love how you perked up and sat up taller. Yeah. Right.
Well, one of the things I think is important for physicians listening is like, well, okay, yeah, I get that, but I'm busy, and they're already having these conversations in their head with their own salesperson. And I think it's important to understand that, okay, if you want to be a good physician to your family, you want to be a good spouse, you want to be a good father, mother, good CEO, whatever it might be in your medical office. You want to be a better, you know that you've got some tension with staff. I think that it's important to understand that, look, if companies outside of healthcare, and I think that healthcare is starting to do this, but maybe not as good as other businesses outside the bubble of healthcare are. If folks like, big organizations like your Coca-Colas and your Pepsis and your Home Depots, if these executives have board of advisors, there's no reason you shouldn't have one as a physician, even in a small practice. You probably have best friends that you check in with every quarter. You probably have, a chiropractor that you might check in with, on maintenance care every month, and you have maybe some of it I've seen it, but it's out there. It's not as common, but there's executive coaches, who help physicians kind of navigate some of the career challenges or navigate personnel challenges. And you have these people in your life. We've got to resource ourselves as physicians. And I'm not a physician, but I am a patient. So I do know what it's like to sit on the other side of the exam room from a stressed out, and I can see it in my own physician, for example, when he made the change into, for example, concierge medicine, started finding more, outlets in his music, and it changed his relationships. He got married. He went from zero to hero in the life of his, family and in his, and in his practice. And it wasn't just because of one business model of moving into concierge medicine. It was he did that, but then he also surrounded himself with the proper tools and resources to say, okay, you know what? I'm not very good at the banjo, but I'm gonna try the guitar, and maybe I'll be better at that. And then, you know what? I'm not bad at the 12-string guitar. And then he joined a band and he's playing gigs around, the city, the town that he's in. And then he found kayaking and he found, all these different things. And so, he resourced himself with the appropriate people and surrounded himself with those people. And so that's what I encourage any physician listening is find the tools that work for you. If it's start with an app, start with a book, start with a journal, start with a call, for example, to Maria. And we'll put the links of how to connect with Maria in the show notes as well below, and how to connect with her and schedule the next meeting. And we'll put all of that in the show notes. But talk to us a little bit about as we close in here, talk to us a little bit about your retreat coming up. Who's this for? Where is it to? What's it about? What's going to be accomplished? And I think you've had physicians on these retreats before, and I've heard good things about them. So talk to us a little bit about what you're up to this spring or this summer. I'm not sure when it is.
Yes, it's in the summer, and I'm extra excited, Michael, because it is in Bulgaria, which is my home country. So I'm taking people back home. We are going to the mountains of Bansko, which is absolutely beautiful and not as crowded, I love doing these retreats, Michael, and I love taking people, especially internationally, because there is power and intent of actually getting on an airplane and taking a long flight to go do something for yourself. I mean, how often does that happen? And when you go there, it's all about you, right? It's all about your body, your mind, and spirit, nurturing yourself, discovering who you are. It's about self-discovery, self-awareness. Everything is taken care of. We're staying in a 5-star accommodation, like white glove type of service. We have chefs preparing healthy food, especially for us. We can accommodate for dietary restrictions. And every day we're going to start the day outside, surrounded by mountainous views, starting the day with movement session that is very intentional, that is all about alignment and properly moving and getting to connect mind, body, and spirit. It's about creating a strong core, and it's about tapping into, I call it, into your physical core as well as your inner core, calming and slowing down the mind. Then we have a delicious breakfast, and then we do a mindset session. That can be a combination of conversation, journaling, meditation. It's very much, I do have some rough plans for what that looks like, but again, everything I do is very customizable, because if I plan to do A, and then I see a different vibe in the crowd, we reroute and we go to what the audience needs. And I will tell you, these conversations they're very vulnerable. They're very open. Yes, there is crying, just in case people are wondering. Another big word, Michael, is community. You go there probably with a bunch of strangers. Actually, we do have some returning people who have met each other at prior retreats. And you create this deep, profound relationship, which is another thing that I think nowadays we're missing a lot of, that are genuine and that are about growing together and supporting each other and really hearing, being authentic. Because for a lot of physician, Michaels, it's hard to say, you know what, I'm tired, right? It's almost like they need the permission to acknowledge and say, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take care of yourself. And then we have one day that's a hike. That's a beautiful hike, going to end up with a barbecue. And then on another day, we're going out the day, you have downtime. So the hotel where we are staying has an amazing spa with saunas and pools and salt rooms and snow rooms and stuff like that. All of that is included, except if you choose to do a facial or a massage, that's on your own. Everything is included. The only thing that you pay extra for is the airfare. And then you go there and you don't have anything to worry about except show up, have fun, and let yourself heal. You come back transformed. You come back very aware. I will give you an example from some of the past retreats. Some of the things that have come back specifically from physicians is they're like, wow, I had issues in the office, and I realized it was not just the staff. It had to do with me. And what can I do? And they have changed their attitude towards the staff, and the staff is almost confused, like, what is happening to you? Like, who are you? Because they have shifted like 180 their approach to how they, treat people, and like their patience and the graciousness and generosity that they're showing, not because they were not generous before, but because they just kept going the way they knew how to go before, right? It opened their mind to possibilities, and we have limited possibilities. So what I tell people is sometimes people want to come to these retreats because they think it's a vacation. It is not a vacation, because we have an agenda and we will be doing group activities. You will have downtime. You will come back a lot lighter. You might come back tired because you're going to be doing a lot of emotional processing, but you're going to come back with like the load of your shoulders. You're going to come back with a lot of clarity. You're going to come back with a lot of grace towards yourself and others. Some other feedback that has gotten is like, wow, I came back and I had a really open conversations with my spouse about the things that are not working out. I came back and I had to apologize to my spouse because I realized it was not just him or her, it was me. Like people have these profound discoveries, and they also learn tools, right? Which are things that that we do every day there, that they can continue in take into their daily life. So they're very transformational. They're a beautiful experience. I call it a lifetime experience. And I invite you to check it out. Michael, I can send you the link so that we can include that in the notes.
Yes, absolutely. And what are the dates of this coming up?
So it's very interesting you asked the date. The dates are June 14th to the 21st, but there is a very solid change. The dates will change to July 5th to the July 12th because I didn't think about it, or I didn't, people have a ton of graduations, family trips in June. So this week I'll decide between the dates, but it's most likely going to be July 5th through the 12th.
Great. And we'll put the links on how to connect and learn more about this, what the itinerary may or may not look like, and how to connect with you to discuss and see if this is a good trip for you. And what's interesting, as I think you shared already, is that there, and I think I find this when I go home to Canada, for example, that there's a moment and you'd never know when it is, but you're kind of anticipating it and you're looking forward to the click or the shift where it's like, I kind of can feel like I can relax now, or like the weight of what I was dealing with is a little bit less. And that's what's gonna, I'm sure you see it, and this is why you have repeat customers or repeat, friendships and relationships there that come back to this is, 6 months after the event, 6 months after you've tried to do these things and you've attempted and you did feel that shift and you came back lighter, but then 6 months later we all get into a pattern, we all get into the busyness, and yes, we're better for it, but at the same time we find ourselves falling into old patterns and routines and habits, and we're a little bit grumpy, as my wife would say of me sometimes. But then we think about those moments like, yeah, you know what, that was helpful, and I remember this part of it, and maybe I'm gonna make that change to this week, and do the journaling again, and until the next time that we meet, or until the next trip that's planned, or until the next therapy session or whatever it might be. But I hope that anybody listening today, especially if you're physicians or you work in a busy medical office, I hope that the overall theme of our conversation today is the importance of finding time for yourself, finding time to incorporate and check in and write contracts with yourself, that are personal, and you find time to do some self-care, because it's not a buzzword, it's not one of those check off the box moments, but you've got to put these intentional things into your life that you will regularly do that will make you a better physician. So anything else you'd like to add before we conclude our conversation today?
So now, really quickly, I'm going to add the masterclass that I just started. I launched. It's specifically for healthcare and wellness professionals, and that's specifically mindset based. And that's if you're feeling stuck into your practice, if you want to grow, but you kind of feel like you're procrastinating, you feel a sense of overwhelm, you can manage your time well. It's all mindset based. And I'm just going to end on the note you made, Michael. One of the resistance points, for example, for the retreat, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a full week, I can't take a week off. And I'll tell you, one of the comments, one of the participants made at the last retreat, she goes, I cannot believe I did not open my laptop the full 7 days.
Wow.
And and that's powerful, right? Because think how attached we are to that. Sometimes, Michael, I get on a phone call, right? The physician schedules a session, an evaluation, a discovery call, 30-minute call. And then during the call, they ask for my help, but then they're kind of like telling me, well, I don't have time for that. And I'm like, so why did you set up the call? Right? That's number one. And then obviously the decision will be yours, whether we work together or not. But the big question that I encourage everybody listening to ask themselves is what you're doing right now working for you? And if it's not, that's life asking you to redirect and do something differently. And if you just want to have a conversation, Michael, you know me, I'm not pressury. I would love to have that conversation. And I love the tribe. I love building relationships. I mean, Michael, I can tell that now you're a good friend, right? We've known each other for a few years. Relationships go a long way. So I'm there to support you in whichever shape or form I can.
And we need those people in our, in our lives, socially, to remind us, to push us into those uncomfortable, awkward spaces and conversations, and because we recognize in ourselves that we have some relational deficiencies, or we have with our team, or our spouses, and we need people to say, you know what, you do have an issue there. Like, you probably should work on that. You need to be more patient, those types of things. You need to be more open-minded to go into dinners, those types of fun things.
And
But
I do have to say, Marco, like, I will make you uncomfortable. I will make you uncomfortable with the questions. And, clients do not always love me. Sometimes I joke in the middle of the session. I'll be like, you still love me? And they're like, not during the session. They're like, I love you after. But
yeah.
sometimes
Well,
those
and
are
our best friends are the same way, right? And our spouses are the same way. And an executive coach, and all those board of advisors, they push you into uncomfortable areas to help you grow. Maybe in some ways, it is personal, and that's a good thing. You didn't sign up for easy as a physician. You signed up for worthwhile. And all right. Well, as we close in our time, that masterclass sounds really great. We'll put the links to that in the show notes as well below on how to connect with Maria. Maria, thank you for your time today. It has been a joy, as always, to speak with you. And we can't wait to hear the results of many of the folks that came to the retreat, and what they're going to experience in the stories and relationships that came out of that, and how they've changed their communities and their practices and their families, and most importantly, themselves. So thank you, Maria, for being our guest today.
Thank you, Michael. I truly appreciate the opportunity.